Hello, and a huge warm welcome to my guest today, Kate Larsson, who is here with me to chat all things Montessori. But before we head into that, I just want to tell you a little more about our guest. After the birth of her daughter in 2015, Kate embarked on a deep and transformative journey into Montessori education. Driven by a passion for child-led learning, she pursued rigorous studies at both diploma and undergraduate levels, and she is now preparing to begin her master's degree. Her career has taken her from student teacher to deputy manager at a small Montessori nursery in London, before moving to the Essex countryside to take on the role of manager at Westwood Montessori Nursery. Alongside her work in early childhood education, she has recently begun exploring adult education, Montessori training, and parenting classes, marking the beginning of an exciting new chapter in her journey. I'm so excited to hear more about this. So let's welcome Kate to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm really good, thank you. That makes me sound a bit more impressive than I am, though. I was like, "Oh, she sounds interesting." Then remembered it was me.
How amazing is that though, when you reflect back on it and you're like, actually, I'm pretty awesome.
It is a bit crazy, and I think I've been reflecting a lot recently because as you say, it was 2015, and it's now 2025, so we're coming up to my daughter's 10th birthday, and this whole decade thing has really got me sort of looking back and seeing, everything that has happened in the last 10 years. It is a really reflective time.
It's amazing, isn't it? And parenting is such a journey. It's full of ups and downs and everything in between. So now you've mentioned you have a coming up for 10-year-old. So what was your journey into parenting like?
So I up until becoming a parent, I didn't really have much much to do with children for a long time in my life. I worked in adult only spaces um until a couple of years before I had Zelda. And I'd started sort of doing a little bits of teaching of dance and drama with adults and with children. And my partner at the time, Zelda's dad, already had a little boy. And so I was spending time with Lex, and um, he was just amazing. Like I'd never really been around a small child or saw what they could do or how they were. And I really think that that did something to me, to my body, to my hormones, to something. We didn't really plan to have Zelda when we did. She was a complete surprise. Um, but it was the minute I even had the inkling that I was pregnant, something changed in me. It felt very, very special, very right. And I knew it was exactly the right thing, exactly the right time.
That's amazing. So do you feel like being a parent has shaped your perspective as an educator?
It has changed me entirely. I mean, I wouldn't dare to call myself an educator before Zelda. I did do little bits and bobs of teaching, and but I had no real knowledge of child development. I had no real knowledge of pedagogy. I was having a lovely time. I was working with some really, really awesome children up in Manchester and then down in London. We were doing dance workshop and drama and storytelling. And it was just really fun. I was really playing with these children. But I don't think that I would call myself a teacher in the true terms of it, or maybe a teacher, but not an educator. It was only after I sort of had Zelda and then went on to discover the Montessori course I went on and sort of learned that there is so much theory and skill and philosophy behind actually being an educator and being able to use that word to describe yourself. So being a mum made me an educator. It didn't change the way I educated.
It sounds like, and I think I hear this a lot when I speak to people in a similar kind of position to you, and it sounds like the two kind of roles inform each other and help you develop and grow in kind of both areas. And some of the research that I'm doing at the moment, I'm speaking to home educators and looking at their identity and that duality of being your child's parent and being your child's educator. And obviously we're looking in a specific area of home education, but actually everyone has that duality, right? Everyone is educating their child and being their child's parent at the same time.
Everyone has it, and I think it's a really interesting to think about it as duality. Do you think about it as duality, or do you think about the holistic experience of being with a child? And I don't know. I know a few people that home educate. I know some people that do the unschooling thing, and they have adventures and exploration that their child experiences the world in that way. And I know people who have classrooms in their house and they have their curriculum and schedule. And I know that both works for both of those sets of people. So maybe those people that kind of choose to have a schoolroom in the house and have set schooling hours and a set curriculum, and then they go, out of the schoolroom, they go back to being dad or back to being mom, and they're, making dinner. I think for me, and certainly thinking about Montessori as a pedagogy, it is more of a holistic experience. It's not like, oh, let's sit down and look at, let's read some stories and then you go play while mommy goes and does the cooking or whatever it is. It's the experience of living alongside your child, and everything is an education to them and to you. How do you make scrambled eggs when you're 5-year-old? We're both learning something. And I think it's that interaction, that consistent interaction with the young people in your life, and very much what, the way the nursery works here, literally here, in the way that the children are so involved in all aspects of their day and all aspects in sort of the running of the snack times, the cleanup times, even the sleep, the intimate care and changing, it should be seamless in my point of view. It should be seamless. There shouldn't be a moment where children think, oh, now I'm doing learning. Now I'm working. Oh, now I can play. Because I think that's where you kind of fall a bit foul because of the connotations linked with those like learning and playing.
Yeah.
Even to young children, when you talk to primary school age children and, oh, I can't wait for playtime. We have 15 minutes playtime and then we go back to lessons. I think it is a shame that sort of why aren't those lessons and that play intermingled? Why should they feel that need for release and then constraints?
Yeah. That's a really, really important thing to bring up. And actually, that's a really good way of thinking about it. So for anybody who is listening that maybe hasn't come across Montessori before, hasn't experienced it, can you explain kind of the key principles behind it in quite a simple and easy to understand way?
Montessori in a nutshell. I could try. So the Montessori philosophy is based on the teachings of Dr. Maria Montessori. But she was knocking around in Italy like 150, 200 years ago. I might get my dates wrong. So she trained as a doctor, and because she was a woman, they put her with the children, and they put her with children that were thought to have psychiatric problems or learning disabilities. And these children had been put into institutions. They had bare walls, they were wearing smocks, being offered nothing. They'd kind of been written off, and it was her job to observe them, keep them healthy, keep them well. And through her observations, she noticed particular things about these children. She noticed special interests that they seemed to have, ways that they, even with it was crumbs of bread on the floor, and the way they were interested in them and looking at them and playing with them. And she thought, this is interesting. And she's a scientist, right? So she's observing, she's planning, she's implementing things and sort of assessing. And she started to grow this kind of pedagogy, taking in inspiration from other educators of her time. And basically, the idea is the Montessori philosophy is built around a child's natural development. She saw that children from the age of 0 to 6 have a special way of learning. They can't be put in a chair and taught things by rote. They need to explore. They need to have sensory experiences out in the world, and they need to be given an environment in which we can offer these experiences, and not only offer them, but then support them, or create materials, make sure there's empathetic adults there who understand these special things about the children, so that when a child has their wow moment about something, oh, this is big, this is small, we're there to give them that language. We're there to say, what next? Have you tried this? So the Montessori classroom is based along a dynamic triangle. So you have the child, you have the adult, and you have the environment. And it is the adult's duty to prepare an environment that is rich with experiences that the child can explore by themselves. They have freedom to move. They have the freedom to explore, the freedom to repeat. We don't have set lessons where they all go and do letters, and then we're all going to go and paint. Then we're all going to go and do some jigsaw puzzles. Everything is available for the children, and they are supported with ground rules, which are based upon respect for oneself, respect for your friends, and respect for your immediate environment. So, children very much know if they really want to run and climb and jump and hop and skip, they can do that at any time. But they know we do it in the garden to keep our bodies safe, to keep our friends safe. In the classroom, we use our walking feet, we use our gentle hands. So it's a lot of very positive language, and following the child is Montessori sort of catchphrase, if you will. And what that means is we set up an environment where we know everything is based on their interests. Everything is based on what is good for them developmentally. We see where they lead, what are they interested in, and we follow them. And then we supply them with the language, with the leading questions, with that kind of sustained shared thinking of what can we do next? Where can we find more of this? Yeah, in a nutshell, I think I maybe covered everything.
Amazing. Do you find that sometimes when children join your nursery and they maybe haven't experienced that way of being before, is there kind of a transition period where they have to learn to be a bit more in charge of their own trajectory in terms of what they're accessing and when they're accessing it?
It's a really, really interesting question, and it's quite a changeable question because sort of the trend in early years at the moment, we actually get a lot of children have babies. So they are in this environment with us from 9 months. So for them, it becomes very intuitive. I mean, they are becoming who they are in this space. But there are still some children who maybe are at home with their parents until they're 3, and they maybe come here just for their preschool year. And I think sometimes for them, it is a bit more of a transition. And it's that interesting thing of, please, can I go outside? Of course you can, the door is open. And it's beautiful that you ask, and we want to know. But it's almost as, oh, I'm allowed. Oh, I'm allowed to. Oh, I'm thirsty. Well, you can go and get yourself a glass of water. Is allowing children to recognize their needs, recognize what they like to do. And sometimes it takes a little while. Sometimes, we do offer a lot of freedom, but that freedom is within boundaries. Sometimes it's the other way. So children might come and they want to take everything off of the shelf and play with all the things all at once. And, we sort of say, well, let's put this one away first. So if your friend wants to use it, they can find it on the shelf. And then we could take this one. So there's kind of a two-pronged way. It's either the children are a bit intimidated by their freedom, or initially they feel a little confused that there are these boundaries in place. But I must say, it never takes long. One of the kind of founding steps of the classroom is that it is vertically grouped. So we have our 2.5-year-olds out to our 4-year-olds, all sharing the same space, accessing the same resources. And the idea of this is almost to mirror a family-like situation, where the older sibling will support their young sibling to access things, will teach them, will help them. And then the younger children see these older children that, if they look at you and you're eating beautifully with your knife and your fork, they just think you're so big. You're a grown up. Of course you're doing that. It's really hard. I can't do it. But if they see a 4-year-old next to them who's just a bit bigger than me and they're doing it, maybe I can do it. Mm-hmm. So this idea that, the children are supporting one another is really evident. So when those new children come into their space, there is always that child or group of children who say, no, we need to put that back before you get something else. And you really take the leadership in those moments, which is really beautiful. Because we can then just stand back and look at those social interactions and give them the opportunity to figure their world out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's really interesting to see, we talk about kind of the transition of the new children coming in, but actually the children already there are going through a transition as well, because they're learning those skills of, I need to take these children under my wing. I need to explain to them how it works here. I need to guide them, support them, show them the ropes to the bows. So that transition is happening across the board, isn't it? And that's really interesting. How about in terms of supporting parents? Is there any element of needing to support parents with that transition of their child into it as well?
It definitely is. I mean, we try to be as clear as possible. So whenever anyone applies to join our nursery, we say, please come and see what it is we do. Because, you know, I am a 100% signed up paid member of like believing one story is perfect for every child. But maybe it doesn't work in some households. Maybe if the way we respect children here, the way we speak to children here, the freedoms we give to children here may not work in every household. It needs to be, your child's early education needs to be primarily for them, but essentially something that fits in with your lifestyle, that is for your whole family, because you can't have this disparity of at school, this happens,
Yeah.
but at school, I pour my own water in a real glass, but at home, mummy gives me a sippy cup. It's very confusing.
Yeah.
At school, I'm allowed to use a knife and cut bananas. At home, mummy feeds me into my mouth. It doesn't work in that way. So the parents come and they see our space and they see the materials the children are working with. They see the way the children are interacting with one another. They see, our staff body and how we are with the children. You don't see a lot of traditionally adult-led group sessions, for example. A lot of questions happen around but what if my child never goes to the numeracy area? Are they going to leave nursery without being able to count? What if my child doesn't ever gravitate towards a literacy area? How are you going to make sure that they're ready for reception?
Yeah.
And they're really valid questions, because if you don't understand the way young children's brains work, if you don't understand that they are pre-programmed with this desire to absorb information, they want to know everything about what's going on around them. And that these materials have been curated carefully for over 100 years to play into these sensitivities, to be enticing to the child, and something that an adult might look at. For example, I'm sure anybody that's heard of Montessori has probably seen our pink tower. It's on every piece of advertising, whatever. It's pink cubes that going from biggest to smallest. There's 10 of them. The children order them and build towers. Now, a lot of parents are like, my child is like, that is so boring. Like, oh, we've got a tower at home and it's got pictures of animals on, it's got numbers on, it's got letters on, they're learning loads. But when you break it down, you think, actually, what are they learning? Because here they're learning, this is big, this is a bit smaller, this is a bit smaller. There, you don't know if they're looking at, this is orange, this is green, this is blue. Has that got anything to do with this idea of categorizing big and small? Is it because the numbers, the animals, the letters? It's, yes, they're still building the tower, but they're not getting any real concrete sense of what they want to learn. And they want to learn how it gets from big to small, and use that language, bigger than, smaller than, because soon they're going to go and do numbers. And we're going to say 10 is bigger than 1. And if they don't know what bigger is, they might think 10 is green.
Yeah.
They might think 10 is an elephant, because on their block, there's 10 green elephants on the 10 block, and they have no concept. So these very early building blocks, children gravitate towards them. They're hungry for that knowledge. They have this mathematical mind where they want to categorize and order their experiences. They're making these little schemas so that they know, that thing's in the sky. Things that go in the sky are airplanes and birds. How can I tell if it's an airplane or a bird? Let me subcategorize. It's flapping, so it must be a bird. What kind of bird is it? Let me subcategorize. It's this color. So all the time, with all of these sensory experiences, the materials we have in the classroom support these children to make sense of them, to categorize them, to make their own file of facts of the facts that they are experiencing through their senses. And when you explain this to parents, some of them are like, this is gobbledygook. Please just sit them down and teach them after. Which obviously there is an element of that too. So, I mean, I've never had a parent that has sort of come back later, once their child has started and had a negative thing to say. But often on a nursery tour, they are confused. They are sort of mystified of these tiny little beings carrying these trays with glass jugs and mugs and things on. But then, they come to their first consultation after the child's been with us for 6 weeks, and they're, oh my goodness, they're hiding where their toys at home. Oh my goodness, they're, using them fork to eat. How do you do it? Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think but I think, if it's not for you, you do come to that show around, you think, you know what, there are lots of other schools out there. There are lots of other, theories, pedagogies. I'm going to go with the one that's right for me. And that's absolutely right. We always
Yeah.
have to do what's right for our children, our families.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the important thing, isn't it? Is knowing what's out there, knowing your options and being able to make that informed decision based on the information that's presented to you. So having the opportunity as a parent, so I'm a parent myself, my daughter's a lot older now, but having that opportunity as a parent to see something, see how it works, and then think, right, will this work with my values, my morals, my principles, and the way that we live our life at home? And I think that's really, really important. And I always encourage parents to go and visit somewhere before they commit to something, whether that's a nursery, a school, a university, at whatever stage. It's really important to see, does this align with me and what I want for my family going forward? And I think there must be an element. I mean, you said there, when your parents come and sometimes they just leave confused because it's very different. But I guess an element of that is it's very different to maybe how they experienced education when they were younger, or if they have, children that are older and then they've had a child that's younger. Even in that small amount of time, things change. And so I suppose an element of that is actually taking on board, could this new way to me of working work going forward?
Yeah. And it's really interesting. And we do get that sometimes, we get families whose, first two children are older and more grown up, and then they've had their, third child a little bit later, and they come to Montessori and they do say, oh God, I wish I knew about you before. I feel like this was my first, which is always a really beautiful thing because these are experienced parents, and they notice the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So you've done some studies that you clearly know your stuff. So you've done your studies around Montessori. Did anything that you learned during this time surprise you about Montessori?
I think, um, is it surprising? I don't know. Maybe it's surprising. So the idea for me that my husband always says to me, like, Montessori isn't your job, it's your way of life. Um,
Love that.
and I think it is that it's more, rather than like finding this really nice way of educating young children, what I discovered was a way to live, a way to be, and sort of being able to. So when I did my undergrad a couple of years ago, I was very late to that party. Um, there's a module on it about Montessori leadership and management, and essentially using the philosophy as a framework for leadership. And this really got my brain, maybe it was surprising, but it really got my brain ticking in that, we respect the child. We understand that we meet every child where they're at. We don't, we don't berate children when they make mistakes. We allow children to develop at their own rate. If we see a child is struggling with something, we especially adapt ourselves to support that child. Why can't we do that with all people?
Yeah.
Of course, the whole idea of the sensitive periods and all of that is very, unique to early childhood. But the rest of it, preparing an environment that allows people to thrive, fostering people's self-confidence, self-esteem, independence. Like when I talk like that, I'm like, if I was a business owner, isn't that how I would want to treat my colleagues, my employees? Is that how these big companies are treating their employees and colleagues? Could this be a way that they treat their employees and their colleagues? And what would you say?
Yeah.
What would you see? What would the difference be if people were treated with this sort of respect, to use the elements of this philosophy to live your life? And I think that I don't know, surprising, but that was something that sort of really embedded itself in me.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think you're so right. When you think of Montessori, you automatically just think young children. I think because that's very prevalent in everything that we see on media, everything that we read in books. So applying that to the workplace, it just makes sense. You know, everyone is a human being. So why are we not treating everybody with that same approach? Because surely that would enable and foster that creativity, innovation within your staff to help grow, move forward, develop. And surely that's what we all want. And
Yeah.
that's a really valuable thing to take from it, actually. I think that's really interesting. So you've touched upon it there. So what lessons have you learned as you've progressed from student into manager and then now running where you're at now?
I think maybe I've got a lot of lessons.
A lot of lessons and a lot of mistakes.
I've learned a lot of things. When I did my course, I was really lucky. I did an in-person course back in the day when those things were very possible for us all. And I had incredible tutors. One of them is sitting in the room behind me now. And we did lots and lots of practice with the materials and how you present these to a child. So your first lesson when you get into the nursery is children don't do what you expect them to do. They will not sit silently whilst you present this beautiful material. You know, they want to play, they want to get their hands on. So the first thing is taking all this perfect knowledge that you have and adapting it in the moment. I always talk about it a bit like, when people go to fashion shows and you see the original Versace or whatever, and there's these crazy, wild costumes almost.
Yeah.
And this is their ideal look for the season. And then you sort of see, the fancy brands making their version. And then it makes its way to the high street. And then you get your Primark version. And you can see the influence that this Versace show has had on this £5.99 outfit from Primark. And you see everything in between. And this is the thing. And I think they give you this absolutely perfect situation of this is how you give this lesson to the child and this is what they're going to get from it. But that child probably needs to go to the toilet halfway through. Someone might vomit next to you. You might have to leave this child that's really engaged because the doorbell rings. So the first lesson is taking all this glorious philosophy and being adaptable and applying it in a real world situation. The first school that I worked in was a very, very beautiful school in North London, Unity Montessori. We had a very small cohort and it was term time only, school hours. And we had a really, really multicultural cohort of children and families and parents that were available to be very involved. And that was, a particular experience. The setting I'm at now, we have 70 children on rote. We are all year round. We open at 8 in the morning. We close at 5:30 in the evening. So it's a very different pace. We are out in the beautiful Essex countryside here. It's absolutely stunning. But that does mean that parents that live here often work in Cambridge or they work in London. They don't necessarily have that same time that they can kind of commit to coming in and offering things. And those that can do, don't get me wrong, we have a wonderful community here, but it's a very different pace. It's a very different vibe. It's a very different feel. So again, it's adapting and it's looking at, what does Montessori look like for 9.5 hours a day? Because that's a very different classroom to something you're looking at for 5 hours a day. The way you kind of set up your provision, the rhythm of the children's day is different. So you need to again be adaptable. And then personally, obviously, sort of moving more into managerial positions, you realize there's a lot more admin to do.
All the fun stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of, ordering new doorbells and, checking the arrival of the Tesco order. And then so it's really making sure I manage my time effectively and making sure that I have enough time to keep the spirit alive, to be with the children and sort of have that rejuvenation of, okay, this is why we're doing it, this is why we're here.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a few moments throughout the day to dedicate yourself to being in the classroom and not being in the classroom to sort of watch practice or manage, breaks or any of those things, but to be there, to exist there, to be present with the children, to enjoy their discovery, and it fills you up to then go and do a little bit more emailing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you think it's important for those people who are managing nurseries like this to take that time to be on the floor, not physically on the floor, but be in the room, on the ground with the children and the staff as well?
Vital.
Yeah.
Actually, literally on the floor. You were right the first time. I think it's absolutely vital. I think, sort of some schools I understand sort of have administrators, and then they have maybe the school manager and what have you. But I think that Montessori talks about this idea of cosmic education, about everything being interconnected, everything being interdependent, interreliant. That's how we come together as a community, as a culture, as a world, she talks about the children being citizens of the world. So how can you work for an organization where you don't understand every cog? Someone calls up and they ask, oh, so I'm looking for a nursery for my child. Could you please explain to me, kind of what it is? I think for someone to be able oh, well, I'm going to have to put you over to somebody else. I'm not quite sure. Like, it's not a great look. And it's not a great feeling to that parent that they are going to invest their most precious being in a space where not everyone's really sure what it is we do.
Yeah.
And as well, I think you've got to be empathetic all the time, and you can't empathize with, the teacher comes and says, look, I'm really, really struggling with this issue in the classroom, or we don't have enough resources for this, or whatever that might be. You need to go in there and experience it. And hopefully you are a little bit more experienced and you can maybe say, do you know what? It's not a lack of resources. Actually, what we need to do is maybe move those things over there so they can be accessed in a different way. And then we can provide this over here and kind of do that creative, critical thinking in the space. If you're just in your office and they're like, we need more resources, you might just be like, okay, let me just order some.
Yeah.
And you're not really going in and assessing that practice and supporting those practitioners to, be able to think creatively themselves.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that goes back to the principles that you were talking about earlier about thinking about it in terms of staff and the grown-ups in the room as well. And how can we empower them to think differently about what they're doing, rather than just like they reorder things without checking.
Yeah. And we have a really diverse workforce here in the terms of sort of the agent experience of our teachers. And this is what's really useful. We have some girls today, actually, they're doing their final sort of assessment, their Montessori qualification, which is really beautiful because, when they come here, we get to put them through their course and they get to live it, in real time in the classroom, as well as doing their online sessions and getting all their theory. And the whole point is that there are other people in that space continually role modeling, always being on hand to support those teachers, because, we've got to keep creating, people that work with children are very, very special. People that work with young children are like angels for wings, because it is such a hard job. It is such a demanding job. The hours are long. There are, it's not glamorous. The pay is, not equivalent to that of a teacher of primary school, but it's magical. You get these children in these formative years, you watch them create their personalities. You witness their first steps, their first words. It's such a gift. It's so joyful. And to ensure that the adults that are surrounding these children are knowledgeable, that they know how to create these environments for these children to prosper, is essential. Because if you don't have those key people in place, the whole thing falls down.
Yeah. And I love what you said before about it not having to be perfect, and that kind of description that you did about how it informs and comes down, because I think that's really important, because I think parents, educators, everyone gets wrapped up in, right, this is what I need to follow and this is what it needs to look like. And that was really valuable, what you said, in terms of actually how you can use it to inform you to, flex with what you've got and make it work in the environment that you're in to the best of, had to make it most effective. And I love that, because I think it's important for us to not get hung up on making things perfect and therefore capping where to go.
And I think also, it's a really valuable life lesson for children to see that things not go right all the time for grown-ups. I had a really invaluable piece of information given to me when I was training. I was having a bit of a rough time myself personally, and I was reflecting on this because we had to send reflections weekly to our tutor about, how it's gone this week. And I said, these things have happened, but, I've taken a deep breath before I've gone into the nursery. I've put on my happy face and it's not affecting my work with the children. And she said to me, that's great, well done, good job. However, have you considered that those children deserve to experience the full range of your emotions? And I loved that.
Yeah.
If you do not cry in front of your child, when they cry, they don't know it's okay.
Yeah.
If they don't see you lose your temper, and I'm not saying at your child, but oh my goodness, I burnt the chicken, show your frustration. Because when children get frustrated, they could be like, Mummy sometimes feels like this too. It's okay. I'm allowed. It's validating. If we present ourselves as perfect beings, these poor children are so frightened to make mistakes. If we, hide everything under the rug, they have no conflict resolution template.
Yeah.
We're doing them a disservice. We're doing them an emotional and social disservice by not allowing them to see that we also experience life on many, in many different colors.
Mm-hmm. So important. One of my roles is a mental health first aider. And so as part of that, I do some workshops with children about their emotions, identifying their emotions and things like that. And one of the things that I do is I'll pose the question as, has anyone ever felt sad, frustrated, things like that? And I always put my hand up and I go, I have. Us adults, we feel it too. And it's that kind of identification of all of these emotions. And I always say there's not just two emotions. You're not either happy or sad. There's so many other emotions in the middle that we experience, and we talk through them and we explain them. And I give examples of when I felt like it. And I think you're so right. It's really important for them to be able to identify those, because then when it happens to them, as you say, they can go, oh, it's okay to feel like this. Or I saw Mummy felt like this and she did this. I'll try it. I saw her standing there taking some deep breath. Maybe I'll try that, see if it helps. Or even if it just provides that opportunity for the child to say, I'm feeling like this, and know that it's okay to say that, because it's not something that is, not allowed to feel like. So I think that sounds like really, really valuable advice that you were given at that point. And clearly it's something that you've gone on and taken into your practice and into your everyday life going forward. Yeah, absolutely. So can you tell us a bit more about these parenting classes?
Yes, so this is a very new, it's a new venture, but it's not a new idea. Okay, so obviously, as part of our commitment to doing what we do, our relationships with families, the parents, carers is, really at the heart of everything, because these children's worlds revolve around the home and the setting. And so for these two things to be able to join, for us to be able to have, offer similar values, offer similar boundaries, it just really supports the children in the best way possible. So, as much as possible, we do try and give information to parents. And, but what we have noticed, what has been noticed, what research has noticed is since the pandemic, new parents and young parents, but essentially new parents, do not have the same sort of access to services or, the sort of groups that used to run. I was super lucky. When I had Zelda, I was over in Islington. We still had 16 children's centres. And from her being 2 weeks old, I was taking her to baby sensory. I was taking her to this, to that, the other. I had a incredibly supportive NCT group who we're still all best friends now, 10 years later. And I had a really, really positive experience because of that community. And, we had the WhatsApp group, like, oh my gosh, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. She's not feeding. Oh my God, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I've not slept. And we were just all there for each other.
Yeah.
And it was vital. Um, and then I get mums I've spoken to that, had babies during the lockdown and stuff. They didn't have that. And, and because of that, not even like, when you go to a play group and you see a child, your child's rough age, and you're like, oh, look at that. Oh gosh, they're already out of a high chair. Maybe we should try being out of a high chair. Just seeing those things wasn't happening. So therefore, the way that parents used to learn, the way that parents absorbed information from going to these community spaces, from going to these groups, it's not existing. So parents, through no fault of their own, don't have the same information in their toolkit. So they don't know. They don't know about, oh, is this the right time that we should be trying to look at toilet learning? Is this the right time that we should be moving on to solids? And of course, you can research, you can go online, but you're a parent, I'm a parent. I don't want to be researching and going online. I want to sit and have a cup of coffee and have a normal conversation while my daughter is having a lovely time playing with some toys on the floor and, talk about my issues and my problems and my worries. So what we want to do with my Montessori Parenting Hub, which we are soon to be launching, is to create those spaces for new parents. We've had a beautiful little outdoor building built here on our farm, which we will offer out to essentially probably parents that are looking to come to the nursery so that we can start building community within the parents. Because we notice as well, because we're kind of out here in the middle of nowhere, there's people from this village, that village, this close by town. So even, that sort of class WhatsApp that always happens at primary school doesn't, because they don't drop off at the same time, they don't pick up at the same time. So that those natural groups aren't formed naturally. And what we want to do is kind of form them for the parents. So we're going to start kind of posting parenting groups where, the children will come, they'll be in a beautiful, prepared environment. But essentially, this will be a space for parents to share, to get to know one another. And then what my idea is that we will be very responsive in bringing sort of trauma-informed practitioners in. So, in a responsive way. So if people are, if there is some birth story trauma, can we bring someone in, do a breastfeeding specialist perhaps, or, whatever it seems that each group calls out for us to be able to make those links, but bring them in more of a community space rather than, a set of parents going and saying, I'm having this trouble, to someone to come in and say, in general, let's talk about healing cesarean scars. Let's just get it out there, and then with that, we will feed through Montessori parenting from the start. So how to, set up your house, how to, what language to use, what toys or materials to have in your home. And then hopefully this will carry on feeding through when they come to the setting, having little seminars for parents of toddlers, parents of preschoolers, and just be able to offer lots of different things, to support as they need it, to really listen and respond, not just to sort of throw, because sometimes it's unfortunately how it happens. You get information thrown at you when your child isn't ready for toilet learning, and then you're like, oh God, I'm sure they sent something about this like 6 months ago. We were in this place. So just it's very much in the dream stage currently, which is amazing because I'm just starting to talk to people about it. And, I met a mum at school the other day at my daughter's class assembly. She's got a little one. She's like, oh my God, I would love that. Would it be amazing? Could you get this person in? And I was like, yes, this is what we want.
Absolutely. I love the sound of it. I think it's amazing. And I'm a huge advocate for supporting our parents with information and support that's easy to understand, relevant. And that's exactly what drives behind what I do with Recap as well. I'm very determined to bring research informed information from academia, simplify it, remove all of that jargon, and get it in really easy, bite-sized, easy to understand ways, because parents, they don't have time to sit and read your 50-page report on something. As amazing as it will be with the information in there, they just need quick, like you say, 3 a.m. Oh my God, I'm having this crisis. What can I do? If they could click onto something and there's an infographic with here's 5 ways that you can help you with that. And that's what I'm really trying to do with the work that I do and bringing it in front of parents, but knowing that it's trusted information, knowing that it's backed by research.
It's not
evidence
to AI and they've told you something that someone once said on the internet 10 years ago.
Exactly. Or even, a lot of our parents, they will go onto social media. Social media is great for community. It's great for many, many things, but actually getting trusted information on a particular subject, potentially from an expert in that field, it's not necessarily great for that. And I love what you're saying with these parenting groups, that having that community of people coming together, that shared lived experience of going through it together, and having the access of that information, that support from that trusted source, from that expert. It's kind of that real life experience of what I'm trying to do kind of online for the parents as well. So I love the sound of it. I think it's amazing. And what you're saying about getting parents input as well, so important. And again, I'm following the same kind of route that you're saying, and I'm holding focus groups with parents and asking them questions about accessing the online platform that I'm building, so that I can really make it the most effective and user friendly for the demographic that are going to be using it. So I think what you're doing and getting parents' input to help you build and grow it is incredible, because it's so important that actually the people that are going to be using the service need to be able to access it in the best way. And how do we know that? We ask them the question.
100%.
We get them involved. I can't wait to follow this and where it goes, and anything I can do to support, share it.
Yes, please.
It's great. And when it's up and running, come back on and tell us about it, and tell us how parents can get involved, because I think that it's going to be a really valuable thing. And I love that it's also going to lead into building that community to your nursery as well, so that when parents then come on board and start sending their children there, they're already seeing those familiar faces. They're already understanding exactly how you're working. They're seeing the staff. They're seeing how the staff are interacting with the children there already. So I think that kind of community building as well, that element of it is incredible. So I wish you all the best luck with that, because I think it sounds amazing. So very quickly, want to talk about your master's degree that you are looking to do. Have you started it yet?
Now I'm all signed up for September, and feeling a little, you're just like, yeah, now's the time, let's do it. And then you're thinking, oh my goodness, where is the time? Yes, I am returning to Anglia University, where I did my undergrad. It's a very, very recent thing that you could take Montessori past sort of a level 5. So I came to Montessori kind of late. I came to Montessori when I was 30, and then I was like, oh, maybe I would like to do a degree. And I was looking, and there was like, education psychology degrees, and things that were really of interest to me. And then there was this announcement that ARU are going to be offering a Montessori BA, and I was like, yes.
I'm there.
Interestingly, that is how I met Michelle, who is now my boss, who is the co-founder of the Parenting Hub. So it set a lot of things in motion for me. So yeah, I finished the BA a few years ago, and I did always want to to go forwards. And it feels like the right time. So it's going to be a master's in Montessori. And it's a kind of a taught master's. So hopefully I'm going to be learning lots of lovely research techniques. I did do some really interesting research in my undergraduate. I was looking at LGBTQ plus inclusion in Montessori early years environments.
Interesting.
How that is, because essentially on paper it's everything we stand for. But in real life, is that what's happening? Are educators informed? So that was a very interesting time for me. So I mean, my thought was always I would take that further into a master's, but in the last few years, because I've become kind of so interested in this idea of adult learning, in this idea of, training Montessori teachers, in this idea of Montessori as a framework for other things.
Mhm.
Potentially, my master's might end up being a little bit more around that, but I have a little while to say. It's 2 years part time, so I'll have a year of learning, then a year of doing. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, it's really, really exciting. And I also came late to my education training journey. So I went to Anglia Ruskin as a student and now work there alongside doing what I do with recap. And I didn't start my undergraduate until I was 30. And I did my undergraduate there. And then I stayed on her next year and did my master's. And now I'm in my third year of my PhD and I work there. So I started there and then just never left.
Yeah, well, it
But
fits, it fits.
exactly. And it's that kind of love of learning and research for me that drove me through it. But I remember before starting my master's, and it's that excitement. And I bet you're in that stage now, that excitement of there's so many things that you could do with this, so many things that you could explore. And it's kind of deciding what direction it will take. And it might change, it might develop into something slightly different as you learn more information that
Exactly.
comes in. But I think it's wonderful to have that focus on Montessori. My master's was in early years education, so it was a lot broader. Um, so I love the idea that we can now focus right in on the Montessori principles and actually frame the research and the education specifically around that. And interesting how you can frame that into the adult world and what we spoke about earlier about kind of potentially in the workplace and creating that sort of framework. So I'd be interested to see where you go with this and follow that journey as you uncover lots of questions and answers, I'm sure, over the next couple of years.
Probably more questions than answers.
But that's how we learn, right?
Yeah.
So where do you see your Montessori journey heading in the next like 5, 10 years? It sounds like you've got a lot in the pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, cool, I hope so. So I am literally in a very transitional space at the moment. So from the summer, I will be stepping away from managing the nursery. And I'm going to be doing a lot more training. So I'm going to be working for the training school that we run here. And within that, developing youth courses, looking at again responsive training, going to school and say what is it you need, what do your staff want, and how can we provide it?
Amazing.
Because the world is changing, and early years teachers are working such long hours that no longer really it's okay to say, well, come in on Saturday, come in on give up your Sunday. So, how can I maybe go into the classroom and just work in the classroom with you and role model and support you in that way? So looking is doing lots of that. The parenting hub is going to be a big old focus coming up. And then obviously doing my master's and running the training for the nurseries under our little umbrella here. Ideally, I just want to kind of build that. I would like to really look into expanding the training school, looking to a lot more sort of hopefully going back to a bit more in-person training. I think it's kind of essential. And then, if I get my master's, probably I'm going to get a little inkling to want to go to my PhD. So, yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll see you at ARU.
I hope I'm not
Yeah.
still there doing mine. I'm hoping to be finished in the next couple of years, but it's funny, isn't it? I mean, you strike me as being quite similar to me in the sense of I love that acquisition of knowledge. I love learning and I love kind of developing my thought processes around new ideas. So for me, it was natural to go, okay, after my undergraduate, okay, I stay on and do the masters. And then a couple of years later, I was like, okay. I mean, to be fair, when I started my undergraduate right at the beginning, I remember saying to my tutor at the time, I'm going to do a PhD here. And she was like, should we maybe just get your undergraduate done first? But I did. I came back and I did get there. But it's that kind of love of finding new ways to think about things and having that support along that journey and being able to explore different areas of
I think that,
education.
and I think I keep being incredibly fortunate, and I keep meeting just really inspiring people, people that spur me on to want to know more, to want to do better, to want to create more, and then to want to like be that person, be that person for someone else,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
not be where I am in any respect if it wouldn't be for those, and it's women mostly, I must say, who have captured my attention, seen something and supported me, lifted me up, pushed me forwards. And I just want to be able to do that for other people. That's really my thing.
Well, I've no doubt you're already that person for a lot of people. It is incredibly inspiring listening to you talk about Montessori. You're clearly very, very passionate about it, very knowledgeable, and have some amazing plans in the pipeline. So I've no doubt you're already there for a lot of people. So keep doing what you're doing. It's amazing. So just to close off, Recap is all about creating that community feel for everybody and making everybody feel at home and part of this supportive community. So I ask all guests to have a think of a piece of advice or an empowering message just to give to our community to make them feel better about their day. So if you could say just one thing that could help even just one person, what is it you'd like to say?
Oh, that's hard, isn't it? I think when I was mulling this over last night, and it's interesting because this conversation went in a very different way to what I'd sort of semi-planned in my head. So this might not be that relevant, but I found Montessori in a time that was very hard for me. I was having a very rough time in my personal life. I was at a very challenging crossroads, and I found it and believed in it and invested in it so wholly that I believe it saved my whole life. And I genuinely think that even in your darkest days, be awake to things, listen to things, because there is something out there that's going to be your lifeline. You just got to be really open to letting it land on your lap.
I love that. I think that's a perfect way to draw it to a close. Kate, thank you so much for giving us your time today. It's been incredible listening to your journey, why you do what you do, and obviously your future plans for the future. So thank you for giving us your time, and I wish you all the very best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Lovely chatting with you.
Thank you. Take care.